my name is Beck. Welcome to a book tag. I'm doing the Coffee and Books book tag today. Let's get into the questions. There are only 8 of them, so I will try and be quick. Question number 1 is Black, a series that is hard to get into, but is hardcore fans. And I think I would actually go with a popular fantasy author for this one, Joe Abercrombie. While Joe Abercrombie has brilliant character work and brilliant prose, I think The Blade itself was the first book he ever wrote and also the first book he published. So he's very deep into this world and he has such intentional writing. I think it's hard for people to get into it initially because while the beginning of The Blade itself is really action-packed, after that it kind of fades a little bit, not in a bad way, but it just shifts focus. And so you get introduced to Logan, who is this cool guy in a forest fighting against these creatures, and it's really climactic. And then after that you go into more of his backstory and more of the context of where he is, what he's doing in the world, and also other characters that get introduced, because it's not just one character, it's multiple POV. So because of that, I think it might be a bit difficult for people to get a grip on. But when you're in, especially if you listen to the audiobooks. So I know people are hardcore fans and love the audiobooks, love the world, and are obsessed with the characters. I'm someone who has recently read his work and caught up to date. So I've just read The Trouble with Peace and I really loved it. But I think you need to convince yourself to dive in. He's one of those authors that can seem really intimidating, and until you start you don't actually know what you're missing. So I would encourage people, if you're thinking about Joe Abercrombie and you love audiobooks, the narrator is only one person, but he does so many varied voices, and so he really makes it an immersive experience, and I think people would really enjoy that, and I loved it for that reason. And now I'm getting all the physical copies because I love the audiobooks and I want to support him. I've just realized how Australian I'm going to sound when I say question 2, because it's Peppermint mocha, and people say peppermint mocha, but I'm like peppermint mocha. I feel very Australian. Anyway, Peppermint Mocha is question 2, a book that gets more popular around the holidays. I think Christmas books, naturally, I know that during winter break that fantasy tend to get really popular, and I know that during fall, or we call it autumn in Australia, I know that during autumn a lot of fantasy gets pushed, especially Name of the Wind, because it's a very fall looking book cover with the oranges and the green. So maybe those. I know Let It Snow tends to get pushed around Christmas a lot, but I'm someone who just watched the adaptation and didn't read the book because I don't think it would be for me. So do what you gotta do, read with the seasons or not. I don't really read with the seasons, I read more with my mood. So I don't know how much merit I can actually give to this question, given that I don't really keep in touch with stuff like that. Question number 3 is Hot Chocolate, your favorite children's book. Obviously Harry Potter, but I don't want to linger on that. I might go with Stormbreaker or the Alex Rider series by Anthony Horowitz. I loved that Alex was a child spy whose father died on the line of duty, and so he was brought into MI6 to go on these cool missions. They were also very action-packed and I adored reading them as a kid. So definitely those, but also Percy Jackson, because I borrowed all of those books from my library when I was at school and I was obsessed. I think that started my love of urban fantasy. I know Harry Potter did in a sense because there was a magical world hiding away from all the muggles, but with Percy Jackson, anybody could be a demigod, and I loved that idea. And so Percy Jackson really sold me on the notion of urban fantasy. It was definitely one of my childhood favorites, and also one that I can reread now without too much drama, because I can just go back into the story and finish one book in probably one sitting, because they're children's books and I'm now in my late 20s, so I can demolish that series in like a week. Question number 4 is Double Shot Espresso. If you get this in real life, I don't think you're human. I don't think you have blood. I think you just have coffee in your veins. Anyway, Double Shot Espresso is question 4, and that is edge of your seat from start to finish. I don't think I have necessarily been on the edge of my seat from start to finish for a book that I've read, at least not recently. I know with Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, the 4th book in his Stormlight books, he tends to write in what's called a Sanderlanche, and that is a build up through the rest of the book, and then the last 100-200 pages of his work is like breakneck speed. But with Rhythm of War, it had a couple of points that were like that. It's like he introduced the book with a Sanderlanche, and then he built up to one and then had another 1 or 2 during the actual book of Rhythm of War. So I think that kind of counts when it comes to edge of my seat breakneck speed, but that also means that I was invested in the characters for 4 books, which are quite significantly long. So I think I had an extra investment on that book rather than just picking up the first book in a series, for example, and being straight in with breakneck speed and being interested. Because often if a book picks up at breakneck speed, then I'm like, who are these people? Why do I care? I don't know what's going on. And then I put the book down. So I don't like breakneck speed initially, but I have to be be invested first. So I do like the formula that Brandon Sanderson's books tend to follow. So I guess I'd go with Rhythm of War. There's probably a better answer that I've read more recently, but I can't think of one. Maybe Leviathan Wakes, but it wasn't breakneck speed for the whole thing, so I don't think I could count that either. I'm just gonna go with Rhythm of War. Question number 5 is Starbucks, and that is a book that you see everywhere. I would now have to go with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I read this book a little bit early and then I got my review up early, so I feel like I got on the bandwagon initially when people were starting to get on the bandwagon, and now people have rolled out all the hype for it and I'm like, I loved it before it was cool, even though it's quite a popular book regardless. So I see that book everywhere now. Whenever I see people holding it up, I get really excited because it was one of my favorites of 2020. But because of the hype, I can understand why that undercut people's expectation and enjoyment of it. So it's definitely a book I see everywhere, but I just hope people are enjoying it when they pick it up and they don't get disappointed too much by the hype around it. Question number 6 is Hipster Coffee Shop, and it says, give an indie book a shout out. I don't actually read indie books really. I might give an underhyped book a shout out, and that is Vigil by Angela Slatter, and that is an urban fantasy set in Australia up in the top state Brisbane. There's one for you if you haven't read much Australian fiction. Vigil follows a woman named Verity, and she's in her, I think, late 20s, early 30s, and she's navigating this consultant role with the supernatural. So that tends to be a common entry point to urban fantasy, having that consultant who can traverse both worlds, human and supernatural. And it's a trope that I really like, so that's why I loved Verity. That's why I loved Dresden. But Verity Fassbinder is a woman who is half weird and then half human. So she effectively has super strength and she has contact in the supernatural world. And I like how she is abrasive but also soft and vulnerable. She's a brilliant female character if you're looking for characters who are strong but also have moments of different tone to them as well. So would highly recommend. I don't think in terms of indie authors I've really picked up anything else. I know Malice was published initially and then picked up, or maybe I'm confusing it with Blood. What is it? Blood by Anthony Ryan. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. I keep thinking of Bloodborne, and I know that's a video game and not a book. I can't remember what it's called. Obviously, it's going to be on the screen, so you'll know what it's called. I just won't know what it's called. But I know that was self-published, and then it was picked up by, I think, Orbit or Hachette. I'm not sure. So I guess I've read self-published books, but not intentionally. So maybe that's something down the track that I need to change. Let me know if you have any fantasy and sci-fi recommendations for indie authors. Question number 7 is Decaf, and that is a book that you were expecting more from. And honestly, I was expecting a lot more from Sylvain Neuvel's new release, A History of What Comes Next. I read it during a vlog, so I have more fleshed out thoughts in that video, and I will link it if you are interested. But that is a novella sci-fi of the first book in a series, and so I've read his novellas and I've read his trilogies before, so I thought a novella sci-fi by him would be really good. But I went into it and then a lot of the things in the book just didn't seem to serve an integral purpose in terms of building up the reader's understanding. There was a lot happening that seemed interesting from a peripheral vision, but the action was cool and the story didn't really fulfill me. So I went in expecting it to be a 4 or 5 stars and it turned out to be a 2.5. So that was a bit of a 180 for me, unfortunately, and I wish I could love it, but I just couldn't. And then we have reached the last question on this tag, and that is question 8, Perfect Blend, bitter yet sweet. Maybe I can go with Becky Chambers here because she released her last book in the Wayfarers series of her adult sci-fi books, and I love that quartet. I was going to say trilogy, but I mean quartet. I really love that quartet. Her writing is brilliant, her character work is brilliant, and I love how she just makes you so at peace while reading her work. I love how she traverses different cultures, and I love how intentional her writing and characterization is. And so when I finished her book, The Galaxy and the Ground Within, her most recent release, I was both happy yet sad because I knew that a series that I'd loved for so long was finishing, but at the same time she's also got A Psalm for the End of the World or something coming out July maybe, and I know that I'm going to get more of her work, so that's where the bittersweet element comes in. I know that this series ends, but I also have other stuff from her to look forward to, so happy yet sad, if that makes any sense. But that is the end of this book tag. Thank you so much for watching. Come chat to me down below in the comments and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.